These are my favorite 15 ongoing fantasy series, ranked in order of how insane you need to be to start this right now. I currently have 43 open series, so join me here because these are absolutely must-reads. In position number 15, we have a series that it is weird, it is mysterious, it is a space opera with fantasy, and it is incredibly consuming. There are 3 books already out, 4th one and the final one. It's coming next year, so I guess it's pretty fair for you to join the ride and start reading this enigmatic, weird, but also phenomenal series, The Locked Tomb. The first one, Gideon the Ninth, fascinated me because the magic system was so bizarre. We have these different houses on space and everyone is a necromancer, but the magic and how they can use that necromancy is different between those different houses, which will allow us to see death magic as you've never seen before. Position number 14, we have a series that got me into a new mood and helped me discover that I actually love murder mysteries and cozy stories that are phenomenal for these spooky but also cozy season. Fascinating characters, super hilarious, but at the same time it just has a non-stop pacing and a plot that it is incredibly easy to read, but it is very, very well done. And that is The Lamplight Mysteries, with the first one, Murder at Spindle Manor. This was the winner of the last SPFBO. There are already 3 books out, and although there's going to be more, so there's still more ongoing here. Each story, it's pretty self-contained, almost consider them standalone, so they're fairly low in terms of commitment on how insane you need to be. Position 13, we have a series that blends cozy fantasy with dark academia, and does so in a way that feels comfy, that feels intellectual, that feels charming, and it's a comfort read. From this trilogy, 2 books have already been released. The first one had a lot of winter vibes, the second one leans more towards the autumn vibes, and the great thing about these is that each book has been released per year. The third and last one is expected next year, so it is really achievable. The stories read fast, and that is Emily Wilde's series. The first one, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, was fascinating because we get to see that idea of having an incredible main character that really wants to know more about the fairy, and she goes in order to understand them, to learn from them, and it's a blend of dark moments with a fairy tale-esque and folklore element. In position number 12, we have a trilogy that it's one of my favorite young adult fantasy series of all time. It's not that I really enjoy young adult as I used to. There are lots of stuff that I am coming to not love. This series, I think, manages something so incredible, which is the magic system. It's a blend of different things and it is very unique. We have root magic, there's also these weird retelling of the Arthur mythology. Third and last one hopefully will come next year, and that is the Legendborn Cycle. The idea of this story, it's so profound and it will allow you to go through very intense elements as our main character is coping with the death of her mom. It's done in a way that was very touching. And let's bring a whiteboard here for a second because we will need to discuss these next 3 books that are really making the stakes so much higher. One of these series have already 5 books, 3 of them are out, and the next one's going to be released in 2025. Then we have another series in which we don't really know how many books there are going to be out, but 6 are already released. The good thing here is that the author really writes very fast. And the last ongoing series here, it's dramatic because there's going to be 7 books, 6 of them are out. So you might say this is great, but 6th book was released this year, so there's still a little bit to wait in order for this drama to be revealed. So if we go with the ongoing series that it's in position number 11, we have a story that will consist of 5 major books and novellas. But the great thing is that this author has been able to release books pretty consistently. The 3 main books are already out, next one expected next year, and the series started all in 2021, so it's been fast here, and that is the Bound and the Broken series by Ryan Cahill. The first one has this blend of modern and epic classic fantasy that it is fascinating, and it seems that book 2 onwards it's its own thing. It really turns dark and it is very addictive, and I absolutely love this series. The first one, it's one of my favorite books of this year so far. So in position number 10, we have a series that again we don't really know how many books there are going to be. 6 are out, the 7th is coming in October, so it's just right around the corner, and not sure if there's going to be 8 or 10 books, but the release pace has been crazy fast, with 6 books being published in about 3 years. And that is the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. This is addictive. It is funny, but it is surprisingly emotional as well. It really got me out of a reading slump, and it's the perfect blend of having charismatic characters, a speaking cat, and really moments that were really emotional. It's perfect if you like Dungeons and Dragons. In position number 9, as I was saying, there's going to be 7 books. 6 books are already out, and you would say, well, this commitment then, it's not as much. You don't need to be as insane to get into these. And I can agree, because you still need to read all of those 6 books, but the stakes and the overall story is just so heartbreaking and so emotionally charged, and that is the Red Rising saga by Pierce Brown. This author has the unique ability of really creating stories that are profound, that really touch you, and there are so many twists, turns, and it just goes down and it goes dark, and you will fear for every one of our characters. And now we will need to bring back the whiteboard and bring also an animal companion for emotional support, because things from now onwards are getting worse. So I hope you enjoyed this. We will have a series that it's only 3 books, but there's only 1 out, so we will need to wait. Then we will have an ongoing series. There's been a new deal, so new books are coming, but the last one was released this year, so we'll need to wait. And the last one, it's just 3 books, but the bad news is that the first one was released this year. So in position number 8, we have a story that it's fascinating because it was adventurous, it was so much fun, but at the same time it was the perfect quest, and who doesn't love quests? What I love the most about this series is that we will be dealing with an adult character, and we see the drive and we see how she has learned through time. And let's be honest, this talks about pirates, about sea creatures, fantastical elements, and it is so much fun. And that is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi. The first book was published last year, and the second book is going to be expected next year. So yes, we're not going to be waiting so long, but there's still around 2 books going. This author is the same one as the Divabat trilogy, and actually this story features the same world, but it does so around 1000 years early. We will be exploring a world that it is full of wonders, and it will transport you to that sense of reading a story. And if you were a child and a fantastic adventurous story will told to you, it is complete whimsy, it has these moments of humor. The next one, it's actually a sci-fi series, and I was in awe on how much I really loved this story, because it was short and at the same time it just managed to pack such an emotional punch to your heart. And I felt weirdly seen by these robots that it is basically not liking society, and it's just very stressed about it. This series includes 5 novellas and 1 full-length novel, but the author already signed a 6-book deal in 2021 with Tor, and in this we will already have 3 more books in this series. One of them, it has been already out, and that is the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. The idea of really having Murderbot being the star, it was so phenomenal. It was strangely uplifting. I was cackling out loud. I really loved hearing about this story, and the bad thing is that the last one was released this year, so we will still need to wait a little bit. But good news, the author really writes fairly quick. And in position number 6, we have a story that made me read even when I was sick. I was with fever, and still I wanted nothing more than reading. It's one of those stories that you know it's an auto-buy and you read it because it's like, I trust the author and the premise seems fascinating. And once you do that, you realize that really this is much more than you wanted. It's a murder mystery story with a world building that it is incredibly fascinating. And really what we get from it is a magic that will be really organic, but at the same time it will blend elements that really resemble hard magic systems, where we will get to see how one of our main characters can really remember lots of stuff because he kind of like stores memories with smells. And that is the Shadow of the Leviathan series, which is such a cool name, by Robert Jackson Bennett, with the first one, The Tainted Cup. Meow. What I really love about the previous trilogy from this author, the Founders trilogy, is that it was the perfect heist, and it just, book 1 had this structure, but then book 2 it just started to blend genres, and book 3 was such a mind-blowing experience. And with this world, I feel something similar is going to happen. We will have a lot of world building already crafted and very interesting elements, but I fear and also I admire and I crave for book 2, in which I'm sure we will get to see way more about this world, about these creatures, these leviathans that are there and that are constant danger. First book was released this year, the second book is expected for late next year, 2026, so well, manageable, but meh. And if you're liking this content so far, not like my cat, which obviously didn't, please consider joining my Patreon. We are a really cozy community. We have a book club. We're currently reading Words of Radiance. We have readathons, reading sprints. It is a very cozy community and I would love to invite you to it. But let's bring again the whiteboard. There's not enough animal companions here. You will also need to have your favorite hot beverage with you, like close to your heart, in order to get to these next ones, because what we will see, it's insanity made books. With these last 5 stories, we will get one in which it's uncertain when book 3 is going to be released. Another ends in a crazy cliffhanger. Another that it's going to be unknown if this is going to be even finished. Other in which I will be 33 years old whenever this story is finished. And then another in which the author will need to be around 100 years old in order for him to be able to write this story, which does not really seem very feasible. In position number 5, we have a story that it is dark, it is gritty, it has a main character that it is very charming, but at the same time he's so cocky that I hated him. And also he's a very unreliable narrator, which is not really a trope that I enjoy, but with this book I managed to find something that I never expected, which is a story that it is so boring and then it is so epic and then it's so majestic, and it is one of my favorites of all time. And I'm talking about Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. This story talks about what will happen if the sun will stop shining, and we will have these vampires that are certainly not sparkling, they are savage creatures, and we will have the main story of this character that is been trapped, and he's telling the story to this interviewer. So it really feels like an interview in which he's relating his feast. There's a lot of going back and forth in this story, which initially made my mind not really fully love this story, but once that I started to understand the pieces and once that the story really puts all of that together, it's honestly such a masterpiece. The bad news is that book 2 was released this year, so we will still need to wait a lot for book 3. We don't know when it's going to be released, but fear not, J. Kristoff delivers. In position number 4, we have a series in which the first book, which is the only one that we have, is one of my favorite books of all time. And I think this is very strange, being a book so strong that really competes with many other series that are either concluded or opened, but have many other books and still ranking so high. For me, it is such an incredible feast, and I really am begging you to pick this story that kind of like it's really inspired in this ancient Roman Empire, but it also has dark academia, and it's been told that it really resembles Red Rising. In my opinion, it is higher in that rank, and I loved how the stakes of this story are settled. I love the 3 scenes that you see throughout the book that I can still remember. There are goosebumps, and I resented deeply having all the plans. This was the most important thing I could do with my life, just reading and exploring the series, and that is the Hierarchy series by James Irelandon, the same writer as the Lycanes trilogy, which I've only read the first book. Now, this story was released in 2023, so last year, and it was my favorite of all time. Next book, The Strength of the Few, is going to be released next year, and yes, I really fully trust Irelandon in order to release the 3rd and last book in this series, and he's already been working on it. I think around 10,000 words has been already worked, so great news. So then why is it here? It is here because the cliffhangers are so unbearable. It is wild. Like, you need to be insane in order to really start this, which I beg you do. Please do so. Join me. Join this club of we are not all right with what is happening. We really need to know more. Please, let's create a movement. But that is the reality of this story. The magic in itself, it is really fascinating as well. It discussed themes that were really fascinating, such as we have the society and magic is established in different layers. Sorry. The layers at the top drink from the ones that are at the bottom. So in order for the ones at the top to be powerful, they kind of like need to take care of the ones that are at the bottom, which really tells a lot of how can you structure society. I loved it. We of course has this trope of we have a chosen one that wants to solve stuff. It has a little bit of a mystery. It has action. I was fascinated with it. In position number 3, we have the ultimate proof of a story that it is brilliant just as his author, and it is also a tragedy. It's one of the most smart, adventurous and incredible stories that I read. There are 3 books already out in here, and there were supposed to be 7 books already at the beginning, but the author has expressed before how he is really dealing with stress, and that stress is weighting him down so much that he does not really want to release, or that he is finding a lot of struggle releasing. And I think all of us bookworms can really understand. And yes, I'm talking about the Gentleman Bastard series by Scott Lynch. The idea of having The Lies of Lord Clamora as the first book, which was so perfect. I read it the first time and I was like, man, this is so not for me. And then I reread it and it just also one of my favorite books of this year. Absolute 5 stars, and I was amazed on how well we were able to have these layered stories with these different time jumps that it blew my mind how smart Locke was, how the writing was descriptive, but at the same time, it was really able to move the pace forward. The story, it just from the beginning, I was so invested. Now, problem here lies in that the first book was released in June in 2006. Then the second book, Red Seas Under Red Skies, was released in July 2007. The Republic of Thieves, the third one, in October 2013, and The Thorn of Andaline, which is supposed to be the next one, is not known. So there's been a lot of years in between. The good news though is that the author came not so long ago and said that there's going to be novellas set in this world that are going to be released soon. I'm not really sure how soon that is going to happen. I think they're settling about next year starting, but we shall see. I cannot wait to read more about this story, and I hope the story gets closed, so I can really recommend even if they're not concluded. Never. In position number 2, we have the best series of all time in my opinion. A story that blends complex characters with a plot that it is really layered. We have these basic stuff that it is happening, but then you add a lot of lore, a lot of world building, and if you want to become a scholar in this world, you can, and you can still reread the books multiple times and still be amazed on how much scope and how many details the author was able to convey. And I am here worried, not because I don't fully trust this author in order to release. There's going to be a series of 10 books, the longest this author has written yet. 4 are already out. Book 5 is going to be released this year, and what scares me is the break that he is going to take between years. And yes, I'm talking about the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Now, these stories started in 2010, which seems mind-blowing. Way of Kings was released then. I loved it at the point, and he usually released a book between 3-4 years, so it is really manageable, but he will take a break of around 9-10 years between the conclusion of this first arc that happens. And I'm boring you. I hope I'm not boring you. He will then wait until approximately 2033 in order to start releasing again. So if we count again with that 3-4 years gap that he takes in order to write these stories, which mind you, each of them are becoming greater and greater in words and in pages, yes, we might be looking at 2043, which basically will turn me into a 53-year-old, which is just so bizarre. Like, I should... would I still be doing videos at that moment? What? Future me will be thinking. This is truly a work of a lifetime for me and truly transformative. I remember reading the first one while I was at university and just thinking that I will finish this arc completely when I am in my middle golden ages. It is truly mind-blowing to me to think. And the last one, and I hope you're ready, because in here stuff gets crazy and truly the author will need to be around 100 years old in order to finish this. So not really lots of expectations, but still there's a story that it is so amazing and so good. It is dark, it is grim, it is highly political, and it's this kind of story that once that you're reading it, you really don't want to read, but you want to read. It's the sense of what is going to happen with my characters. The author is considered a gardener, so he does not really know from the beginning what is going to happen. He knows lines, but he kind of like allows his characters to live through the pages, and that really creates a very reality-like stuff is dangerous, shit can go wrong in these stories. The popularity of these works has non-stop growing since the first release, and I'm talking about Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. The first book, Game of Thrones, was released in 1996, and book 5, Dance with Dragons, in 2011. The gap though between these books have been increasingly significant, so let's see this graph. If we were to extrapolate this trend, which is certainly not reliable method for prediction, but interesting for discussion, I hope, we see that between the first book and the second one, there were 2 years. Then from A Clash of Kings to A Storm of Swords, another 2 years. And then from A Storm of Swords to A Feast of Crows, 5 years. Feast of Crows to Dance of Dragons, 6 years. Dance with Dragons to Winds of Winter, it's at least 13 years. And counting. And given that it's been over 13 years since Dance of Dragons was released, in following this increasing gap pattern, we might speculate that its release might be somewhere between 2025, 2030, and this already like beyond. And A Dream of Spring, if we continue with this, we might be looking even at an additional 15-20 years gap after Winds of Winter, which will hypothetically put the release around 2045. Martin will then be around 97 years old, which, yeah, he can do it, but it's a stretch. I still believe this is one of the greatest modern fantasy stories that we can read. It really is a testament on how the characters are all grey and you love them and you really understand what they go through, and it is so heartbreaking, it is so dramatic, and you cannot miss it. If you want to know more about my favorite books of all time, I'll leave here a video in which you can see more. Bless. No, petita, no. Bless. Bless? It's fine. You're beautiful.